can find more episodes of Your Thoughts Podcast at yourthoughts.com. We are on Spotify, Apple. Support our Patreon. You can support all sorts of different content through Aggregate Perspective. I do music, the podcast, all different kinds of art. So support the Patreon. That will directly support the podcast. Editing cost a lot, so please help out. Like us on Facebook, on Twitter, Your Thoughts Pod. I have an Instagram. It's iPods Are Gross. I don't post as much there, but I do occasionally post podcast-related content there. Thank you for watching. Hello, and welcome to Your Thoughts Podcast. I have my co-host here today.
Yes, this is Ryan.
And I have my guests, Jimmy and Brittney. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Pretty good, yes.
Got our baby here too.
Guest.
Yes, special guest.
Baby Arky.
Yes, baby Arky.
This is a long time in the making. For a little bit of background for everybody.
For real.
Yeah.
We had a 4-hour debate at a coffee shop forever ago.
Yeah, before the world ended.
A year and 5 months now.
Oh, look at you keeping track.
Yeah.
No, we've known each other for quite some time now. We have a regular group discussion that we have been going on for longer than before the...
The three of us have known each other since probably junior high, right?
Yeah.
I'd say that's about accurate. Yeah.
Jesus.
Dating ourselves. So...
Dark times.
Yeah.
The darkest times.
And this is something we've wanted to do and have these two on for a long time now. And it's happening. So.
Well, we appreciate coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
It's always fun to talk with y'all, so having it recorded and sent out for a few people to listen to, other than ourselves, is nice.
Especially the police.
Yeah, you know.
Why you gotta bring them up?
I don't know. It might have something to do with the topic.
No, that can't be.
No? Oh,
Yeah, because
okay.
it's actually no.
I don't know. I don't know.
We don't know. We're gonna learn.
Guess
today.
we'll find out.
So, Jimmy and Brittney, as the guests of Your Thoughts Podcast today, what would you like to talk about?
I mean, first thing that came to my mind when you offered the spot was anarchism and why it's the solution.
It's the solution.
Yeah. So
Like, what grade cleaner? Like, are we looking like more of like a Clorox or? No.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that brand.
Anarchism. Try it at home now. Better than 409. But, no, so a lot of people think of like worst case scenario anarchism as, people kind of taking power and using weapons and stuff to force others to either do whatever it is that they want to do or take their stuff from them or, just in general control them. But, when you take a second and you really think about worst case scenario of anarchism is basically any government that's happening now. When you think of them using force for getting what they want, stealing things from you, you look at taxes. I mean, how many of us really want to have our money going towards bombing people in the Middle East? How many of us want our money going towards things that are clearly frivolous, like the F-35? And so, when you really take a step back and you look at how governments operate, they kind of operate at the worst case scenario for most anarchist philosophy.
Okay. So
just a overview, I guess, like just studying anarchy as much as I could within this past week. Not deep
learning
enough.
on the fly here.
Yeah, just cramming. The sense that I got was that there are a lot of different strains of anarchism.
Absolutely. You have a lot of similarity with individualist anarchism is kind of what most people know as the Libertarian Party right now. That would be the people that are more focused on individual rights. They're focused on getting government abolished and working towards more freedoms for themselves. Then you have other people on the left that are a little bit more focused on things like societal rights.
My favorite topic.
Babarchy. But you have, you have other people on the left that are working more towards societal issues and societal freedoms, and they're looking towards, how can people be ensured their rights as opposed to just a single person. Then you have people that kind of sit in the middle, and it's more of a diversity of tactics, in my opinion. You need all branches of anarchism to really get a well-rounded picture, because if you have people so focused on everything else, on not the individual, then you can very quickly lose will of your people to continue that philosophy.
Okay, so obviously, like all things, there's a spectrum. Mm-hmm. So let's get a little bit closer and narrowing down since you're the guest here, you guys are the guests here. What do you define? What is the take that you take when it comes to anarchism? Like, where is your stance on it, given that you've just laid out that there's several different blends?
Yeah. So for me, anarchy as a whole, if you consider yourself an anarchist, you kind of hold these values regardless of where you sit on the spectrum. Generally speaking, you want minimal intrusion from other people, and you want other people as well as yourself to be able to be free to do what it is that you please within reason. You always understand that even the furthest right libertarian is gonna understand that harming other people is still inherently wrong, and agreeing on that is pretty much the basis of anarchy, is not allowing other people to harm others just because they can. That's how pretty much every anarchist looks at a government. They're harming people because they can, because they have the power, or because they want to change and influence them in a certain way.
Okay.
So where is the distinction between American libertarianism, because libertarianism globally is different, American libertarianism and anarchism as a philosophy, I guess.
Whoa, hold up. Did you just say outside of America? What is this bullshit?
Oh, right. They don't exist.
Yeah,
not in politics.
What are you talking about? Outside of America. Get out of here with this.
We will have international listeners. So
it's interesting actually that you ask about that, because libertarianism, as we know it now, back from the 70s, took a lot of its philosophy from anarchism, and anarchism has been a philosophy that's been around for centuries at this point. It's been talked about before that, but I believe, I can't quote me here, but I believe it was the 1800s that it was really first coined as a term. I'm sorry. Man, I just lost my train of thought.
That's all good.
It happens every podcast.
So some of what I was seeing, just like I was trying to do my best to like really understand anarchism as a philosophy. So doing the historical research from where it came from, where it deviated from like Marxism and like French Revolution philosophy into like where it is today.
Versus like libertarianism in America. Yeah, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. So like libertarianism took a lot of the individual liberties that anarchism talks about, and unfortunately it kind of forgot a little bit about the societal stuff, which everybody kind of picks and chooses where they find their...
There's so much.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so some people focus on some things, some people focus on others, but as a general rule, anarchism as a whole is, and to use a term that is demonized, it's more radical than libertarianism. Anarchism takes libertarianism to its final conclusion of, if you want all of your freedoms all of the time,
then it requires
this
action.
is what you need to do. Right. Yeah. Your rights, to an anarchist, your rights have responsibilities. I'm not saying that all libertarians don't think that or what have you, but as a general rule, that just tends to be the big change between the two. So you'll have libertarians who are more focused on, like I said, personal freedoms, while anarchists are more focused on, in general, more focused on freedoms for everyone, even at the individual level. So that means that you do tend to have to be more responsible for yourself and for others.
Okay. So, like, going back to like the conception of anarchism and everything like that, I'm going to be the layperson here today. I went in completely blind, and all I know is the personal stereotypes of anarchism. So I'm sure we're going to dissolve some of those here today as well. But
Yeah,
I'd like to start off in the beginning, because you said, probably around the 1800s is really like when it started becoming a coined term and everything like that. Do we know the original...
I think it was before that.
It may have been, yeah. Like I said, don't quote me on that for sure.
Okay. So regardless of timeline, then, do we know where kind of like the beginnings of that philosophy come from, where they stem from? Did it come like, people wanting to get out of feudalism and they wanted their own personal freedoms?
There
and
is
they
a
wanted...
pretty deep historical record of the quoting of the term, the coining of the term, and then like how the philosophy with action has evolved over time. So it was like Russia and like Eastern European, I guess feudal era.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, it stemmed more out of the want for freedom as well. So yeah, it stemmed from just in general, and it propagated in multiple locations, much like like democracy, like multiple forms of governments. They find their own ways, and that's kind of how you get the spectrum of it, right? Is because then you find people that, like I said, are more focused on individual liberties, or more focused on societal ones, or more focused on unionizing or things like that. And then that's how you get, especially like Marxism. Marxism is huge on the workers unionizing and really getting their power that way.
Right.
She agrees.
Yeah, enthusiastically.
Unions for the win.
A lot of anarchism stemmed from workers' rights movements.
Okay. Because I was almost wondering, like the way words and idioms come about. You have, people subjected to monarchy, and we're like, this is really shitty as a one of the working people, or maybe as a peasant. Maybe I want the exact opposite. The exact opposite couldn't be as bad, right? So monarchy, then anarchy, as we know in how terms work, the overthrowing and
so just
dismantling
like
of it.
a general historical perspective was around the time that this term was coined and the philosophy started to really develop into legitimate change. People were working like 12-hour days in poverty,
next to their children,
starving, next to their children. Their children were dying before like age 6.
Yeah. And it's really incredible how quickly we forget where we get the luxuries that we have today, because a lot of the things that we take for granted
and the losses to like lead up to it.
Like even in our environment and capitalism that we're already trying to work against even today. That's been a long time coming, because that was, that started all the way back to abolishing slavery. People want to say that was something that every country went through. It's something that is a scar on a lot of countries, this and that. But there were abolitionists that signed the Declaration, that were there for all the major events in American history, and they tend to get pushed to the wayside because that wasn't how America wanted to be founded.
Right, exactly. Just like atheists historically, there have always been atheists. They were just omitted because it didn't fit the cultural norm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you have things that they squash it, and, the victors obviously write the history. And so they do what they can to eradicate those things, because you can kill a person, but you can't kill an idea. And so the more you can hide it, the easier it is to keep it, unknown.
Okay. So, do we know of any forms or societies that with this kind of thought and process philosophy has been used in, or at least influenced majorly? Because, I doubt that we can look at any society. I'm not sure. Again, layperson here. I'm not sure if we can look at any society and you'll be like, okay, this was an anarchist society, or maybe it had an ethos or like a heavy philosophical founding, and took ideas and some tenets from it. Do you know of any kind of societies, any kind of peoples throughout maybe even the forming areas? Jesus. Forming areas of it, what sounded like, more Eastern Europe kind of thing, from at least what Tyler said.
It's still in the present day. We have there. It's not necessarily a nation because other nations haven't recognized it. But Catalonia is the most modern example. It's a region in Spain, and they have multiple times actually declared their independence from Spain. They were successful for quite a while before World War II, and then the inevitable happened. The Germans came, and that was a little bit past after they invaded France. They were marching through Spain. And Catalonia is right on the border of France and Spain, and so they wiped them out. And once the Germans were defeated and everything kind of started going back to more stability in Europe, Catalonia revolted again. And while the international stage hasn't recognized them as a nation, they are a society of people that do work together. Just recently, I think it was late last year, they actually all had a giant strike. All of Catalonia had a strike. The farmers blocked off the roads out of Catalonia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so people couldn't come in or out, and they just stayed there and struck. And so, there are modern day societies that do still work. The problem is that when governments see that they're working, it scares them because that means that they know that they're outdated at this point.
Right. Okay, so that's an interesting thought that you brought up there, because I talked to a few other people on the other sides of the political spectrum all over the place, and I've talked to a few communists that will also say like a similar thing. Like, you can't really say that communism has failed in a sense because we've never really had a chance to try, or any kind of society that starts to begin and get a little bit going, or even sometimes start to be successful. Next thing you know, capitalism will rush in and kind of either form a coup, which we see several times over.
All of South America.
All of South America, yeah.
In the Middle East.
The Middle East, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't the government that we wanted.
Right.
And so we decided that we can go in there and choose for them because we're the land of the free.
Yeah.
But they can't be.
Yeah, you're free to choose between A and B.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I want to bring that up, because I talked to a few people, because I'm like, okay, so surely, if this was, I've always been under the conviction of like, if this is a workable system, if it's a workable solution, we should see examples of it, right? Yeah. But of course, exactly.
So historically,
they don't. That was terrible.
That's a prime example of that.
Historically, there are many examples of anarchist groups or cities or communes developing, and then other governments squashing them.
Yeah. Because
there was one that I heard in Ukraine around Soviet era that was crushed by Russia.
Yeah. And it's because it's in the government interest. It's in all government's interest to crush any anarchist. So, you have...
Especially for
leftists-
that time period, because they were very about expanding their territory.
Yeah. And so you have leftists and fascists working hand in hand, because anarchism is a bigger threat to both than either one is to each other. Because at the end of the day, once people understand that anarchism really can work, once just caring about your neighbor as opposed to caring about what some random person's doing across the ocean, once you start doing that more often, we have less of these issues. If we stop caring about what governments are being ran in what countries, then we don't need to have a military that's bigger than the next 11 combined.
Yeah. We're all in favor of demilitarization here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think that would be a hard sell here.
Yeah, we don't have too many strong, favorable opinions to militarizing the way we have been. Another thing to bring up with when it comes to this group here, we've also had a lot of conversations. This probably isn't the first one we've dipped in a little bit into this. I wanted to make clear, though, when it comes to this group specifically, we haven't always agreed on a lot of stuff. If anything, we've probably disagreed more than I think we've agreed, honestly.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think it's important, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I am definitely more extreme on the down of the spectrum for sure. But it's
I thought I would be more opposed, but as I was learning, it just kind of solidified my political perspective. I feel like it's like a lot of what I believe now developed out of these kinds of movements and perspectives.
Yeah, and so it's surprising actually how much we can attribute towards anarchist movements or just freedom movements in general. Any sort of rights movement, to some degree, is at least a liberty movement, which helps guide towards anarchism. You have You have all of the 40-hour work weeks. You have child labor laws. The abolition of slavery. The 13th Amendment didn't actually abolish slavery.
Yeah, we still have
can go into
slavery
that
here
in a
today,
minute.
guys. Yeah, it's still here.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it literally says in the 13th Amendment that in cases of imprisonment, slavery is allowed. It's hard to deny that slavery is allowed when it's literally written in our Constitution, and it's only proven further, I think, when we have 20. I think I have it written here. 5% of the population of the world's prison population, and only 4% of the actual citizen population of the world. And that's just incredible. We have 5 times the amount of prisoners that we should have. Not that we should have prisoners to begin with.
And it's this whole industry in the U.S. especially, this whole money-making industry to keep people within that so that they can continue to either sustain itself or grow.
Yeah, because capitalism in and of itself requires infinite growth. Mm-hmm. And so the easiest way to get infinite growth is to cut your payments, cut your costs. And so if you can
eliminate
cut your
competition,
labor wages,
which in this case would be the government-run prison systems,
or worse, the privately owned ones.
Yes. In which
Right.
case you can't cut your dollar anymore
No,
than
referring
slavery.
referring to the private industries.
Yeah.
But I don't know if what would we do about that?
About the prison system?
Yeah.
Yes, because you did say something there interesting. I would like to circle back to that. I think if I heard you correctly, we shouldn't have prisoners.
Oh, that's correct. I am a firm believer that imprisonment doesn't solve anything. To me, that is in line with feudalism. That is locking someone up and throwing them away into a dungeon. We've been doing that since people have been riding horses. That's not something that's practical.
Psychological influence of behavior doesn't happen in those kinds of environments,
Right.
which you could argue is the intention,
Yeah, exactly.
to increase recidivism and then perpetuate that cycle.
Exactly. And that's the problem, is that when all you're doing is punishing somebody, they don't learn, and the things that cause them to do it aren't fixed. A majority of the crime that happens because of poverty. The crime that doesn't happen because of poverty generally happens in the heat of the moment. And that's somebody who either had
Or it's extremely premeditated and white collar and doesn't get notoriety.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless it's like an extreme case like Bernie Madoff or something.
Right, and in which cases, you could not even Bernie Madoff, because how many people just get away with it? How many people don't even get looked at? And that's the other point that I was gonna say too, is the prison system is all sorts of messed up. If you even going back to all the way back to the people who are arresting people and throwing them away, you have cops that can't solve murders at higher than a 50% rate. And that's just the ones that are reported. Mm-hmm. How many missing people are actually dead? Right. How many missing people do you know of? Not that you know of, but how many people that are missing are actually gone? Those murder files have never even been opened. Right. Right. And there's clearly a percentage. I'm not saying all.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're called cold cases.
Yeah, but even still, not even the ones that make it that far. Somebody that just doesn't have any friends or family and and is missing. They didn't show up to work. Their boss filed a missing report, and that was the last that anybody talked about it. Right? Those things happen, and people die, and it happens that way. And those don't even get reported. When you think of stereotypes, when you think of the stereotypical person that you, when you think of the stereotypical person,
I don't like stereotypes
that can hide a body or get rid of one for you, you kind of think of a good old boy. You think of a Southern guy that knows the sticks well, or you think of some guy that's just right across the border, north or south. Mm-hmm. You think of those people that the cops aren't going to look at, though. A majority of the time, you think of the white guy with the truck and that always has the tarp in it, right?
Tons of land that just doesn't really come into town that much.
Yeah, and he's got tons of land, and there's car parts everywhere, and you can literally see it in your head. And again, it's a stereotype, of course, but at the same time, the cops use stereotypes all the time. The cops are still stereotyping, who they're going to pull over. They don't pull over white guys to see if they have their papers. Even if they are Canadian, they don't care.
Nope.
It's just, it is proven in the...
They just wave you through the border checkpoints.
Yeah, it's proven in the statistics. It's as much as you want to deny that there is systemic racism, you can't deny it when, again, the 13th Amendment literally says it, and that directly feeds into the slave patrols becoming the cops, that then lead their way into over-policing minorities because of racism, because of racist starting points. And then even if you have a racist cop that comes in and does that, which most of the country did start off with racist cops. That's just a fact.
That's just a fact.
You can't be taking slaves and taking them back to people and not have at least an understanding that what you're doing is wrong. In my opinion.
They think it's right, of course, but
at the same time, and so you have a lot of cities that started off with data that came from racist starting points. They were over policing. Cops are only checking people of color because they didn't care about the white people. They were convinced that the white people were okay. It's the people of color that are causing these problems.
Right.
So they check them, and because that's the only people you're checking, that's the only people that you have stats for.
Is tribalism, an us versus them mentality, and the us is good and the them is bad.
Yeah, especially if you want to look at just the systemic racism of, hey, the white people can't be doing this. It must be all the colored people. I mean, just look at the illegalization of marijuana and everything like that right there from the beginning. It was something that, oh no, it was always just, the people of color doing this kind of stuff. But once it started becoming more popular amongst the white population, outlawed.
Right.
So.
That was a combination of two different elements. It was the capitalist society at work trying to eliminate a competitor in the paper industry, and then legislation that could also, based on racial terms, imprison Mexicans and black people.
Well, and in doing so, it terrorizes your people, and that is how most governments work, is through
propaganda.
Through fear tactics, right? Is you listen to a cop not because you think the cop is right. You listen to the cop because he's got a taser, he's got spray, he's got pepper spray, he's got a gun, he's got an asp, he's got tons of things to hurt you.
Yeah.
And how many things does he have on that tool belt to actually help you?
Maybe some gummy bears.
Those were for him.
The law is definitely upheld at the end of a gun.
When you are faced with getting pulled over, you have someone that can legally kidnap you. You're gonna do whatever.
Exactly, right. And that's the thing is they hold a monopoly of power over us, because when the first thing that people think when they see somebody assaulted a cop was, oh, that person did something wrong and they're trying to get away. When for all you know, it's just as likely that the cop was doing something wrong and they're just trying to get away. They're just trying to protect themselves. And so, having those problems with and not being able to trust your police force means that you just shouldn't have it. If you can't trust the people enforcing the law to follow the law, then you're inherently going to cause problems.
So what does that look like within an anarchist system when it comes to the law, the police force? What does that look like? Or do we have, the stereotypes come to mind. Do we have just vigilante groups and hired hitmen and bounty hunters, essentially? These are all stereotypes, of course, but I want to ask.
What is life like without the police in an anarchist? Is it even a society? Or
to your anarchist viewpoint,
anarchist. Yeah, and so the thing that I think another misconception of anarchism is that anarchism is not about just everybody doing their own thing. It is a society still. It's about not having hierarchy. It's about not having somebody hold power over you.
To what extent do you mean not having hierarchy?
So
some naturally develop, especially when you study biology, you see there is hierarchy that does develop just naturally
within a community. And I would agree that in biology that you do, but I think that we've evolved far past biology, considering we don't, our sick and dying don't get eaten by lions. We don't just in general, we have so many fewer diseases and so many fewer ways to die. We have the life expectancy has increased so far that a majority of people die in accidents or of old age. it's not due to sickness. It's not due to like a major like limb loss or something like that. I guess that would be an accident. It's not due to a major disease or something like that.
I would say like heart disease is one of the leading causes of death
in America.
In America.
And that's right. And
What again? Outside the world? What is this?
I was gonna say no concept of global statistics for health.
It's not like the world is doing great in health, but we're
doing objectively better.
We're doing horrible when it comes to our physical health, and that has to do with healthcare. And so I'll use healthcare as a little bit of a stepping stone because you can still have a society in anarchism, and this is one of those ways. A typical, let's say that in a typical day in an anarchist society, I'm working in a kitchen because that's what I love to do, and I cut myself. Well, I should just be able to go down to the doctor and go, hey, I cut myself. And he goes, okay, he wraps it up, fixes it for me, and I go on my way. I can go right back to work. He doesn't get paid, and I don't have to pay anything. But he also comes down to my restaurant and gets his meals that he eats, once a week or twice a week or what have you. Okay. And, and the guy that fixes my car, same thing. He's coming in too, right? That's how you build a society. You build a society by helping each other. You do what you can and you do what you're best at, and you help others around you that can't do that thing. And so, because even
what if
though
you don't want to?
And so here, that's the thing, right? Is that's a part of being a part of the society. Is in anarchism, even though you have no hierarchy, that doesn't mean that you don't still have an agreement that you can have with somebody else. You can still have a free market in an anarchist society, because I can still decide I have bees and I want to give my honey or sell it and I want to trade it for things. So I have a booth that I have all my honey out at, and somebody says, hey, I just slaughtered my cow. I have a few steaks. I'll give you a pound of steaks for a jar of honey. Sounds good. Now I have steak. And it works a lot like trade did back before money, but
bartering.
Yeah, and money is a great concept for developing, but now that we've developed as a society, we don't need that as a way of commerce anymore. I mean, it doesn't even really mean anything when you have a man that has $750 billion and people that can't eat. Money has no value in that sense, because if a man can hoard that much what should be able to buy him food and somebody else is starving, that's inherently wrong, right? I mean, that is, to me, that
right. Our mode of production has surpassed the need that we have for the products that we produce.
Yeah, it's there was a quote, and I can't remember who said it anymore, but we don't have a food shortage problem. We don't have an issue with making food on Earth. We have plenty
anything
of it,
really,
but we can't get it places because we're holding it back. We want money for it. We want things for it. So people starve because people who make the food, or the people who control the people that make the food, have decided that they don't deserve it because they don't make enough. And when you live in a society that says you have to produce or you're worthless, then you're proving to everybody that you don't think their life has inherent value.
My initial exposure to anarchism was actually in sociology in college.
These damn colleges teaching our kids
these social sciences.
Oh god. I didn't even go to college. What did that? Oh gosh.
Community college.
Fair. Dang it.
Dang. I was doing a report on dumpster diving and the whole subculture around that, and it taught me about how so many grocery stores just throw out products, and they do that because there is a liability exposure that they may have for providing people with food that is past the expiration date. But that does not mean that the food is actually bad. It just means that there's like a sell by date, and people will go dumpster diving, and these stores have put locks on their dumpsters to limit people from getting the stuff.
We have locks on dumpsters and spikes on chairs or park benches.
Yeah, removal of benches in general.
Yeah, I've seen reports of bleach being poured on trash.
Yep, poisons and
we're burning it too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, when we get to the point where we're destroying things that people need,
and we're knowingly
just so they
doing
can't get it. Yeah. That's, I mean, how do you not see that the system is flawed there? There needs to be a radical change. There needs to be something that is inherently different. Because even like 30,000 years ago. I think it's like 26 or 28,000 years ago. There was a young man who had a broken foot, and there's clear signs of it being repaired. When archaeologists dug them up, you can see the foot had been repaired. Any animal, and that's what we were. I mean, we still are, but that's what we were, especially back then. We were on the food chain. Yeah. You're done. If your foot is broken, you're done.
Yeah.
Any animal that uses legs to travel,
and it's broken, it's
yeah,
dead.
and it's broken, you're basically just food for the next predator.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he had mended bones proves that there were other people taking care of this person who could not provide for the community in any way, shape, or form. So you could still have a society, and you can still progress and have prosperous people while still taking care of the people who can't take care of themselves.
So a conception that people have when they hear anarchism is that anarchism is, and this is something that anarchists say, is elimination of the state, and the state perpetuates capitalism. So what?
Hold up. You got to define those terms there, bud. so like the state, because I mean, you can have a state that's communist, and you can have a state that's
Right.
of other political
Just the government
affiliation.
in general.
But anarchism in general does rebuke any sort of government. So
Any state in general.
yeah, and that's what, so, and the state in general can be called a government for any layperson. That's basically what it is. It's the state is what anarchists call any form of government that uses force.
Okay.
So you can still have, like I said, you can still have bodies of people, you have people that work in restaurants, and those people are gonna be the ones that probably best know, your food safety standards. So they're gonna be the one in your community. You can have the people who are running the businesses decide these are the temperatures that we think the meat should be set at. This is the concentration of bleach that you should have in your cleaner. This is how big your exit doors should be. This is how many fire escapes you should have. These are things that when you're working as a community with the intent to better the community, you can come to good solutions. It's when people come in with their personal interests in mind, as opposed to the society's interests in mind, that you start to have problems. And that is always going to happen, and you're always going to run into those issues.
But aren't there always going to be people, even within anarchist societies, who don't want those rules enforced because it infringes on their ability to operate their business how they want?
Oh, so like you're like maybe
Taking it to the extreme. Almost.
well, like
I mean, there are definitely people like that, though.
Oh, right.
oh yeah, of course. Like we're all on a spectrum of people when it comes to doing things, and we have our outliers in society. And that was one thing I was going to bring up, like in kind of symmetry with that, is if you have people that just don't want to partake, or we just have people that are just dickheads and they don't want to do anything, and they're just like, you got Dave down the street.
Well,
he doesn't work, he doesn't do anything, he doesn't want to contribute to society. What do you
Things
do?
like a fire escape or health codes could be viewed as enforcement of a regulation by an authority. And isn't the whole premise to not have that hierarchy of authority in general?
And so I get what you're saying, because then you have pressures from the other people that are there, right? Well, the other thing that you have to understand as well is that in a society like this, it doesn't cost money, it doesn't cost resources for you to move either. So if and when the society starts moving in a direction that you don't want it to anymore, you can find a different society, especially in the day and age that we have today, where we're so interconnected with the internet. It's not like that's going to go away. People are going to want the internet to stay around.
Hopefully not.
People are going to want the internet to stay around. You have, I mean, look at how many people you have that mod video games for free. Look at how many people that, that do patches on internet websites. And
Oh yeah, there's a lot of open source things as well, which could be viewed as like a form of anarchism, having like open source
It is,
software, or software is the only thing.
I want to
that's coming to
download
mind.
music for free via LimeWire, and I'm going to give my computer AIDS.
But would it be a problem though if musicians didn't have to sell their art just to live?
As a musician, no, it would not. The problem is that I do have to do that to sustain myself.
Exactly.
So I have a day job now.
Exactly, and that's the thing, right? Is that in a society like that, if all of your needs are covered because your neighbors are making sure you're not starving to death.
I need healthcare and
Right.
food and a place to live.
Right. And so as long as your neighbors make sure your house is staying up and you make sure your neighbor's house is staying up and the doctor around is making sure that you stay alive and you're making sure the doctor stays alive, where's the problem with anything happening like that, right? Because then what if Dave does just want to sit there for the rest of his life?
Yeah,
and
I was
do
gonna
nothing?
ask, like,
Who's to say that that's not allowed? Why is that such a bad thing? It's not like when you really look at humans in general, animals, they like to be productive. Humans enjoy being productive. Even at the most base level, we enjoy creating things and
helping people. We also inherently like doing that.
Yeah, and so okay, if Dave does just want to sit there on his butt for his entire life and do nothing, how much does he really detract from the rest of society? Now, you can extrapolate and go, well, what if everybody does?
Well, not necessarily everybody, but what happens when we have like a decent enough of a population size, not significantly huge, but enough. Let's even say that we're in a smaller community, and maybe 10% of this community, just 10%, not a whole lot. Let's even just give a number of 500 people, and like a 10% of this population that just doesn't want to do anything, and just on the laws of statistics, maybe it's somewhere around there. It's probably lower. It's probably like when you actually look at human psychology, it's probably way less than that. I have no idea. I'm not a psychologist, but just for the sake of the argument, like is there kind of a solution? Because that obviously has to be a problem at certain point where okay, we don't have enough people that need to contribute. What is the incentive to get those people to contribute?
So I think that
other than beating them up,
I think that I truly do think that it's overstated that people think that others are just lazy. I mean, if you want to look at the amount of people that worked their hardest to survive through this pandemic, that was a time where capitalism failed, the government failed. For all intents and purposes, for the past year, we've been living under anarchy, and it hasn't completely crumbled. We weren't allowed to do the prosperous things that anarchy can allow for because the government is still being oppressive, in the sense of the protests weren't as effective as they could have been because, police brutality protests are being, answered by more police brutality. That kind of, doesn't breed progression. And so, but even still, you still have people that were doing what they could to help their community. How many GoFundMes were there? That's anarchy right there. That's people helping other people that they don't even know.
Couldn't you make the argument that that's also capitalism?
No, because capitalism as a whole, capitalism's ideology is holding capital. It's having something and using that something to gain a profit from.
People are using their resources to fund something, though.
But they're not
Isn't that
profiting.
the libertarian perspective, that removal of the government is still there, but people are using their money for something?
You're talking about charity, the concept of charity.
I think so.
In capitalism. Sure, but I mean, we've had capitalism in America for 250 years now. How is that working out? We have 60-ish billionaires here. And it would cost, I think, $20 billion to end homelessness in all of America. So, I mean, Bezos makes that in 4 months. And so, I mean, if charity was really a thing that happens in capitalism, then why don't we see it?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a huge need for it, and it's so much so that the owner of GoFundMe literally said, "We're not supposed to be."
Yeah, we're not a healthcare system.
Yeah, we're not the healthcare system. We're just supposed to be helping people out that need some help.
So let me kind of summarize and kind of understand where you're coming from with the answer. So we have this community. We have maybe 10% of the population that just doesn't want to contribute, or at least doesn't contribute enough to where it's a problem. Mm-hmm. Basically, your idea, and correct me if I'm wrong here, or wrong summarizing, is other people will step in and maybe go above and beyond to make up for that lacking population.
And you have that, but also you still have a democracy. You can still have a group of people deciding. I mean, when look at even the most base level of a community, you have a family, right? Mm-hmm. And take away the hierarchy of a mom and dad. Take that away, and the kids are grown up, and you're just talking about where everybody wants to go on a family trip. Is it a government? Is it forcing somebody to go somewhere because 5 out of 6 wanted to go to Cancun and the other one wanted to go to Florida? Like, it's not. It's just that's what a majority of people wanted. And anytime you have more than one person doing something, you're not always going to agree. And so when you enter into a society, you enter in understanding that it's not going to go 100% your way, and you have to be willing to compromise. You can't go into a society expecting it to be your way or the highway. That's literally tyranny. You know, and so going into an anarchist society without the understanding that you're going to need to compromise and you're going to need to find common ground, then you're going in not as an anarchist. You're going in as somebody who does not either understand the concept or is going in bad faith.
So essentially, like, there wouldn't be like a certain specific solution for that. It would take a community working together as a whole to deal with these individuals.
Yeah, because I don't want to speak for any anarchist society, right? Because my decision may not be what another anarchist comes up
I want to
with.
make clear
Right.
as well, this is your version of anarchy, so
Yeah,
I wanted
right.
to like get your view on how this would be done.
Right, but also, in my opinion, I wouldn't be the only anarchist in my society. So I would present the idea of, if it's not a significant problem, or if it's just something that we can remedy by a couple other people stepping up, I would be the one that would be willing to step up personally. So I would be willing to have that as an idea, But other people may come up with, I still think that they should have to do X, Y, or Z. They should come up with a list of things they are willing to do.
Right. There'd be some sort of agreement.
Yeah, there again, compromise. That's why you have a society. You get everybody to come together. You have a meeting. You talk about what you think the best option is, and then you vote on it. And then you do something like a ranked choice voting, so you have something a little bit closer to like real democracy, and not what we have today.
Wow, so you're saying there's voting in anarchy? Like, there's things that you can do outside of just chaos and burning and stuff like
it's not
that?
just like Mohawks and Molotovs.
It's not Mad Max all the
What?
time?
It's not.
I know, it's sad. I know. I probably lost a few anarchist friends now.
I noticed that there is-
There's just a guy with like headphones on right now with a huge punk mohawk right now. He takes off his earmuffs dejectedly, like, I don't want to be an anarchist anymore.
Throughout learning about anarchist philosophy in general, that is the core misconception that violence is a core tenet of anarchism, but that's just a means to an end, and most anarchists don't really want violence.
That's correct, and it also a lot of the violent anarchist stereotype comes from governments trying to propagandize.
Trying to take out the government in a sense. If you take it to the extreme of, hey, I want anarchy now, that means this has to go.
Right,
There are historical examples of the government making it seem like anarchists were causing the violence as well. Like in Chicago during, I think it was like May Day or so, the May Day protest, the Haymarket protests, I believe. There was a bomb that was thrown that killed police officers, and there were, I think, 3 people or maybe more that were tried and hanged, and some of them weren't even there.
Okay, so this is a while ago if we're doing hangings.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so
But yeah, it's I mean, the propaganda against anarchism has been long and thorough.
really
a lot of
different kind of viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, most anarchist philosophy that you'll find, it has the same kind of principle, but it is something libertarianism has adopted. Although I like this principle is the non-aggression principle. It's literally that you can do whatever it is that you like as long as there's no victim,
Right.
and that goes back to the whole not having any prisons.
Every time I hear that, it makes me think of the Wiccan creed, and if it harm none, do as you will.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
And that's Wiccan culture is, well, I should say, anarchism has again so many different roots that a lot of different places have a lot of those similar feelings, and Wiccans were also oppressed severely by governments, and so that's kind of a natural progression when that thing is oppressive to you, you naturally go, well, I don't want that thing anymore, and you kind of fall under the anarchist society. But yeah, it's just when there's no victim, there's been no crime. Somebody that wants to do drugs and then just pass out, or if they do drugs and something happens to them, at the end of the day, that was their choice. They know the risks. They understand what can happen using those drugs, and okay, you use it. And then the next thing that people usually say is, well, what happens when they're high and they drive? Well, it's the same thing that happens when you drink and you drive. I mean, it's still wrong. You're still, at that point, you are now no longer being aggressive. Whether or not you actually successfully harm somebody is insignificant to the non-aggression principle.
So a question that came up that I'm assuming somebody in the audience will have is, if you eliminate the structures, to enforce authority, i.e. the police, then how do you enforce people not drinking and driving?
You have your society. I mean, you know your neighbors. You know the people that live around
like what
you,
does that look like? Like a community enforcement kind of?
Yeah, and so that's what I was gonna say.
So we're all
And
just gonna show up with pitchforks and.
We heard that you were drinking and driving.
Ben, you were drinking and driving last week, and you killed Jenny down the road.
What say you?
I mean, society still has to have carrots and sticks, no matter what kind of. If it's a society, that means that we have a social contract to get along in some kind of sense, and we have to take care of one another in a sense. Right. It's just the how does that go about? How does that get executed?
And and then how do we not allow for things like witch trials in this kind of government form?
Yeah, and so this is where you start getting really deep into different philosophies. But generally as a rule, you would have the people in the society as a whole would vote on it, much like anything else. You would want to have a small enough society that this would be something that's relatively conducive towards a quick solution. But you would want to at least have people be able to be a part of it, whether voluntarily or not. And
so are we talking like the size of cities or smaller? Or
and I think that this is. I mean, I
guess that's up for debate.
Put some real pen to paper to figure something out like that.
Are we building a society, or are we just discussing?
Yeah, exactly. But for community policing to work, you need to have people that have come together and have set a set of standards that they want in their area. For lack of better rules, for lack of a better term, they want laws that people agree to in that area. But the difference is that you have to agree to them. It's different again in society in this day and age, because you can't just move to Oregon because you want to be able to smoke. You can't just move to Spain because you like their government better. That costs a lot of money, and for a lot of people that's just financially unfeasible. There's no possible way that they could reasonably get out of the state that they're born in, and so you tend to come up to limitations like that you wouldn't necessarily have in societies that are formed under anarchist philosophy. Because if you don't like that society, you can just decide to leave and find another one that does more. Which is
a pretty common conservative argument.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you don't like it, just leave. But the problem with that whole concept is that you can't
money
just
and the
leave.
cost.
It may cost like a couple $1,000s to move.
Yeah, and
then you also have to get like a driver's license in a different state by a certain time period, and now you have to change your address.
Right, and that's what I was just gonna say. That's just the monetary. That's not even including all of the bureaucracy that occurs as well.
And then you need a job because you have to sustain yourself.
Yep, and that's when you have to spend a third of your life producing more than what you're getting paid for anyways. And then you get to go home to recover just to go do that again. It's a very unsatisfying life. And when...
It definitely is.
Yeah, and when that's all that you are told, and that you're told to just suck it up and enjoy it, it's hard to not look for other options as well.
Yes.
So what is it that got you to decide on anarchism, libertarianism-esque? Just what is it that convinced you to go on that side of the political spectrum?
So my family's Native. My grandmother's mother was full-blooded Pueblo Native American, and she lived in New Mexico. And the government came by and was just was doing the census, and we're going house to house, and they ask the normal questions, and they also ask what race you are. My grandma wasn't dumb, or I should say my great-grandma wasn't dumb, and she knew that the people that were telling them that they were Native American were also being taken away. So she denied it and denied it and denied it. And because that was back in the day before computers and things like that, they kind of just had to go with it. Yeah, they couldn't. She was just she just continuously said, no, you have the wrong person, you have the wrong house, I'm not her, I'm not native, that's not who I am, I'm Mexican. And so they finally believed her.
Why was that better?
Because they weren't putting Mexicans in reservations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's like the same. I'm guessing that's where your last name came from.
Yeah. Well, Chavez is actually is still my family. We, my grandma and my grandpa are both. So the
Is that your mother's side? Then?
Yeah. So the man that my grandma's mom married was Mexican, and his last name is Chavez. So that's the whole thing. But my grandfather was also a Chavez too, which is interesting.
There's a lot of them out here. My wife being one of them previously.
So she was Pueblo, and they were trying to take her land, and they were lying to her about what they were doing in the first place. And if it wasn't for my great grandmother being as intelligent as she was, my family would be on a reservation. And so when you grow up with that as your family story, you grow up understanding the government's never had your best interests in mind.
Right.
And so I've always kind of grown up understanding that the government is not the answer.
Yeah, and that's a true ethos for a lot of marginalized communities and societies, is that you generally tend to find the people that aren't always cool with the way things are going because they're not a cis white straight man that is benefiting from society.
Yeah.
So we tend to be on other sides of the political spectrum when it comes to that, because of that very reason. The government has historically not had your best interest in mind.
Exactly. I mean, that's literally for generations. They've been, actively attempting to oppress my entire family. And so when that's the society you grow up in, when that's what everybody deems as okay, you don't really have any other choice other than to look for something else.
Right. Exactly. Tyler, any thoughts, expansions on that?
So it's interesting to me just because I am a cis white male. I don't like using the identity politics. So
yeah, not everyone does, and we get it. Yeah, but I mean, that was just those are the people who benefit from society.
Right. I'm not offended or anything. I'm just saying.
But you can't deny that those cis white males were the ones who wrote the laws, who wrote everything that is the backbone of this country. So yeah.
It's just interesting to me because I did come to that same perspective, but my family history is the polar opposite, honestly. People in the government all throughout my childhood, and just my come to anarchism was actually rebelling against that whole philosophy because it just didn't add up to me. The military-industrial complex and the war on terror and police brutality and helping the poor and education and healthcare, all of it just it didn't seem like those interests aligned with being in favor of the government in general. Yeah,
and that's it's good that people come to the conclusion of anarchism in different ways, and it's nicer when it doesn't have to come through personal tragedy, and it's that's
I had the luxury of coming out of it out of just naivety and interest in rebelling against my parents.
But that's that if I could make it that way, I would love it if every single person that that came to that conclusion was the way. It's just an unfortunate reality that sometimes reality does get forced onto you from a very young age. But even still, I think that the education system does a huge disservice on American citizens specifically, because they don't talk about how the left and the right aren't really left and right. They're far right and slightly left,
right.
Slightly left of far right. Yeah, and it's
I don't think we go deep enough. When we have government, I don't think we go deep enough into delineation of different political perspectives and all the full spectrum.
Several things. Several things. I mean, I've been a fan of history since I've been a little kid, and just
this is what we have. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, a lot of our teaching in our school system is a lot of propaganda. Honestly, when it comes to history and government is all propaganda. Because I remember very vividly when we got to the World War II section, and it's talking about Pearl Harbor and everything like that.
It's only American perspective.
It's only American perspective, and I remember telling the teacher and telling other classmates the Japanese had a reason for doing this, how we're blocking and starving their people with trade routes and everything like that. They had to do something. Not saying what they did is fine. I'm not saying that before someone thinks that way.
But it's not that they didn't have a reason. It's not like they just went, let's attack.
Yeah, I always want to tell people.
Or that they weren't ferocious in their attacks either, like rape of
Nanking.
Yeah.
But a lot of what I will tell people when someone throws out like, I don't get why they think like that, or I don't get how they got to that position. There's a reason why people believe the things they do, and there's a reason why people do the things they do. Yeah. They have to be convinced. Well, I mean, yeah, they're usually. Let's be honest here. People just do something for stupid reasons.
Well, people make generalizations as well, so the assumption is that there is no reason, they're just crazy. Or
but there is a certain conclusion that person came to in their mind when they decided to do something or believe something.
Yeah, everybody does things for their own personal logic. Even if you can't parse it out, it made sense to them at the time. Exactly. And that's the thing that you have to also, kind of look at as well is when you look back at our history lessons that we get taught, and we're always the winners, we're always the good guys. We've never had a single mistake in our entire
1812, we're gonna skip over that. Vietnam, we're gonna skip over that.
We had 43 presidents, 43 when I was going to school. We had 43 presidents that all were completely perfect.
Yeah. All of the 1960s, we're just gonna glaze over what happened there.
They're fine now. They're fine. That was all dealt with. Everything's okay now.
Yeah, racism doesn't exist anymore.
Prohibition.
See, even the baby nose is a joke.
And we see it on social media all the time. People actually convinced that those things are true, which is a tragic disservice, and I think is in large part due to the education system. We never really had the dueling actual perspective of this is what actually happened. No, we just had to put a little cherry on top and say America's the best.
And that's and that kind of goes back to the whole why governments don't like
nationalism in there.
Yeah, exactly. But why governments are not always the solution for problems, because that's another one of those where the education system can't be biased like that, because then you have huge swaths of the population that don't ever go outside of what they were taught in high school, don't ever look past what they were spoon-fed. And so then they believe in, America's always been great, when really we had 20 cool years out of the 250 years that we've been around where we did some cool shit in between the really messed up stuff that we did. Yeah.
I think what is the world history the combined total? I think there's 7 years of world peace.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, since America was founded, we've been in something like a war every 20 years.
Yeah.
So I mean,
one that's gone past 20 years.
Yeah,
some that lasts that long.
Yeah. We're good at it. We're a warlike people. That's just what we do. And until we change that about how we view ourselves, until we change that about how the society.
It's the same thing though. The requirement to change it is the removal of incentives. All these private institutions that are profiting off of selling weapons to other countries and extracting minerals from these countries, selling drugs, we have to remove those incentives.
Yeah, it's all profit motive.
Yeah.
And so
or power or territory.
Yeah, and it's and it's profit in different ways then, right? And it's not always monetary profit, but that's when as long as we treat the world as a ball of capital, we're always going to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It is just as much a living creature as any one living being. There's so many things that we have already clearly messed up, and it's on us as a sentient species to remedy that stuff, and that's not something that you can have remedied with a profit motive. The profit motive isn't going to get somebody to invest $1 million in something that may give them an investment or may give them a return in 10 years when they can invest $1 million in gas right now and get it in 60 days.
Yeah, and it's very clear that no one's done that because we would have had that by now.
Exactly. I mean, and you see it a little bit with the solar industry. That industry is barely now becoming as inexpensive as coal and gas. But the problem is the reason why coal and gas are even still competing is because of all of the tax money that the government gives them.
And the suppression by those companies themselves, like Shell. They knew in the 70s that there was a global impact to using fuel.
Yeah.
Or like the building of the freeway system. We could have done a rail system that would have saved a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of time.
Yeah, and a lot of square miles too. I mean, that's unusable land. And even if you were to dig all that stuff up, that's so much money and so much cost to fix what we've already so deeply broken now. And that all stemmed because, again, as a capitalist society, we were the country that invented cars. And so we kind of became the nation of cars. Just like Rome, all roads lead to Rome. We did basically the same thing, just instead of horses and carriages, it was with cars.
We've done a lot of similar things to Rome.
Yeah,
We've had that discussion before.
Several times.
History rhymes, it doesn't repeat.
Thank you, Mark Twain. Or Samuel Clemens.
Or whoever gets accredited with
Well, no. His name is Samuel Clemens. Mark
fair.
Twain is his pen name. So, sorry. I like Samuel Clemens. So I don't know where we're at on time right now.
We're at about an hour. I don't know if we want to continue. Like, do you have further questions? I
I
didn't prepare any questions.
One thing
just
I
figured
wanted to
we'd
kind
freeform it.
of, I kind of want to hear, what's your elevator pitch for Anarchy? So the whole concept
what
of
do
an
you-
elevator pitch is that you find yourself in an elevator with a director and you really want a movie to be produced. You have a movie idea. So you have until this elevator is done going to pitch that movie idea to him. What's your movie pitch for Anarchy?
All right, so my movie pitch for Anarchy. Oh man, this
You
is a
have,
slowly
like-
closing door.
Yeah, the door's slowly closing. He reaches down and he hits the button.
Yeah, so for me, anarchy is the clear solution when you look at all of the faults of government. All of the faults of government stem from the fact that people are trying to hold power over others. If we can get rid of that and we can get people to focus on helping others like we love to see in the news, then we could change society to the way it needs to be.
Okay. There's a good clip right there for you, Tyler.
Yeah, we can definitely use that.
Awesome. Brittney is tending to the baby over there.
Yes.
But
So
yeah.
last question, I suppose. We are at an hour, so
Yeah, so we gotta start wrapping up here.
yeah. I'm not sure how we're doing on batteries.
One of the cameras is gone.
Turns out.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. All right, so
Okay, so I don't even know if we can do this in a short amount of time, but like, what is the next step? How do we get to anything like?
how do you start implementing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I always tell people to do at home is start a garden. It's really simple, it's really easy, and it's fun. Yeah, you have to accept that you're probably not going to be a green thumb your first couple of years. You're going to lose a lot of plants, but plant a bunch of different things. Anything that you can find, anything that you can think of. If you don't have a lot of space, like if you live in a city, in like a metro area, see if you can put one on the roof of your apartment complex.
Take notes.
See if you can, put one on the roof of your apartment complex, or see if, you can start a community garden within your complex itself. There are lots of empty lots in cities, and it doesn't take but, a phone call to say, hey, I want to, hey, to the city council or whatever, do you mind if I use this quarter-acre lot that has a bunch of junk on it? I'll move the rocks, I'll move the beat-up car so I can plant a couple trees. And what that does is that starts to build your community. Because there's going to come a time where you have a tree or, a pumpkin patch that just explodes. Mm-hmm. And you have more pumpkins or lemons than you could even think of what to do with. And so you knock on your neighbor's door, hey, do you want a pumpkin? And now you started to build that community. You started to take those real steps to show other people that you can put in work, you can put in effort and give to other people and see how your whole community can benefit.
Awesome.
So that's one.
Yeah. Then so that would be at the individual level. And then what we can do as people living in a society that has a government is be way more active. Go out and protest anything and everything that you could possibly want to protest. If you have something that you strongly believe in, go get a piece of cardboard or poster board, get a Sharpie, write it on there, and sit out at a corner and show people that are passing by. You're gonna get people that agree with you.
So be politically active.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, everything is political when you're talking about society. Down to down to puppies should be free. You know, if you think that everybody should be able to be entitled to a free puppy, if you think that everybody should be entitled to 3 square meals a day, that is unfortunately in this day and age political.
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
controversial.
right. That's not something I view as political. I don't think that it's political that people should be able to live without having to produce something.
I think there's this misunderstanding too. Like, literally everything is influenced by the government in some way, so everything is political in some form.
Exactly. And so yeah, be politically active, but be politically active in the things that you hold most dear, because that's how you're going to find the people that most align with the things that you're looking for.
Your values and
exactly.
your perspective, somewhere to go.
Right, because if you're out there once a month, first weekend of every month, holding out that sign, eventually somebody's going to go, hey, he's out there the first of every month. And I agree with that. Yeah. He's going to go out there too. Or they're going to go, why are you out here? What is this all about?
And they might agree.
Exactly. And that's how you get started. And that's, again, how you build communities. That's how you start building what you call a parallel power structure, which is what you need to form a society in a place where it's already being oppressed by, like, the government. So you get to a point where you have all of your neighbors and all of the people, all of your neighborhoods are all communicating with each other too. And that's essentially an anarchist society right there. The government can pass a new law all they want, but if you and your friends don't want to listen to it, how are they going to stop an entire group of neighborhoods, let alone,
we know how.
Right. But it's much harder, right?
Yes.
And it's infinitely harder the more people that you get. And so as you build and as you grow your community, you grow in power, you grow in strength. And then you talk to your local government and you say, hey, these are the things that I want changed. And then they don't change them. And then you make a bigger stink about it. Or, there's a park that needs some restoration. And so you talk to city council, hey, this needs some restoration. When can we get this done? Oh yeah, we'll work on it. They're inevitably not going to work on it. And you bother them and you pester them. And after a while, in your community, you probably have somebody that knows how to restore that stuff. So you as a community get those resources pooled together and you get that renovated, and then you go back, hopefully with a bunch of people and journalists, and you get them to go up with you and you go, hey, why didn't you do this thing? You said that you would do this thing. You told me months ago that you would get it handled. Why didn't you get it handled?
Yeah,
and
following through.
Yeah, and then they'll tell you, oh, we'll get it handled, and you show them, we already did it.
That is definitely a ridiculous aspect of our press currently. They are not holding anybody accountable. They're just following whatever is going on.
Yeah, and so if you get a camera and you get it on recording and you send that out, and it's gonna go viral. Everybody loves to see a government official get owned, and so that's gonna start showing that official, hey, you either need to own up to what you actually are saying, or I'm just gonna keep embarrassing you like this.
So start a garden, be politically active,
embarrass local government,
embarrass local government.
Shame them.
Let's say accountability.
Oh yeah, that's fine too,
a nicer way to put it, I guess.
We want this to be broad so that
absolutely
we can bring more people into the ideas.
Maybe sometimes they need some eggs thrown at them,
They're the figurative.
That was a joke.
That's under be politically active.
That was a joke. I'm not talking about doing any harm to physical harm to political people. That was a joke. I'm just saying.
Okay, Mr. Federal Agents. You can stop
and
listening.
From my understanding of studying anarchism so far, accountability is baked into it as well. You have to justify why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I had said earlier. I touched upon the whole in anarchism, you believe that your rights also hold responsibility. Yeah. Like your Second Amendment right. You have the right to bear arms. But
so a lot of the people that were tried for crimes and eventually killed, they attempted to justify what they did in court because that was a principle for them.
Mm-hmm. And so
Killdozer.
Right, and that's you at some point you have to understand that people will take action if they feel as though they're not being heard. Mm-hmm. And so you have that accountability, like I was saying with the Second Amendment. You have the right to bear arms, but you have the responsibility to do it correctly. You can own a handgun all you want, but if something were to happen and there's an errant discharge and somebody gets killed, that's on you. That's your gun. That's your responsibility. At the end of the day, no matter how much people want to say that their rights are their rights and there's nothing about it, you do still have that responsibility, even at that fundamental level. Even with your First Amendment, not yelling fire in a crowded movie theater, right? And not doing nothing about that is inherently illegal, but you shouldn't do it. That causes chaos. It's going to harm somebody, and so it violates the NAP for anarchists.
Mm-hmm.
So start a garden, be politically active, accountability. Did you have any further questions?
I mean, probably save it if we ever do another segment right now. I don't know how much deeper you want to get into it.
Just like closing
questions. No,
I guess,
my elevator pitch kind of thing. That's what I
Okay.
mostly wanted. So,
did you have anything? Any questions for us or like?
I mean, I appreciate y'all letting me on.
Yeah,
I
of
know
course.
that the baby was a little intermittent in there, but the cameos are nice, right?
We needed some cuteness for such a heavy
yeah.
topic.
So guys,
Exactly.
if you follow us on YouTube, go ahead and check it out. You can go over and you can see cute little baby.
Yeah, I don't have
some
any things
chaos.
to plug yet.
So
So.
I'll send you a picture of that's like the cutest picture.
There you go.
And you can use that as like your thumbnail.
There you go.
Thank you for reminding me. We need a picture of you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I keep forgetting every time. I'm just like, okay, I got to go on Facebook and find pictures of the guest.
But yeah, no, I just thank you again for having me on. It's always fun talking with you two, and it was a blast trying to propagandize myself against the government.
Yeah, thank you for
You'll be
being
getting
on.
a call here
Thank
within
you,
48
thank
hours.
You for thank you for having the courage to speak about what you believe in such an informed way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It helps other people figure out what,
Especially with the views of anarchy as they are.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
especially culturally right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's like I said, it's always fun, and you like I said, you can kill a person, but you can't kill an idea. So
Exactly. Absolutely.
now that it's out there.
The seeds have been sown. All right. Well, we're going to start closing it out then.
So thank you again, Jimmy. Thank you, Brittney. Thank you, Ryan. I want to thank the crew as well. Thank you. Cameras. So you can find more episodes of Your Thoughts Podcast on Spotify, Apple. Please subscribe and please search for it because I'm assuming that would influence the algorithm as well and help us show up. You can search us online as well, yourthoughtspodcast.com. We do own that domain, so if you search us through there, that'll also influence the algorithms. The further you do that, the more people will see, and then these ideas can spread, or we can at least have conversations about where we disagree on them. Check out Your Thoughts Podcast on Facebook, Your Thoughts Pod on Twitter.
Smash that motherfucking like button.
Smash. Like, share, and subscribe, of course.
Rate
Sharing
5 stars.
sharing is a great way to organically influence other people to maybe check us out, and that'll help us as well. Your Thoughts Podcast on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's all the socials.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you guys again. Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
And that concludes Your Thoughts Podcast.